Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibiers? Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. If you're on YouTube, you can see Miss Juliet, the newest addition to the household. She's very clingy. I can't go anywhere. She is like a Velcro dog already. I just had to leave to run an errand, and she's so happy I'm home. It's so sweet. Speaking of dogs, I have some people I really need to thank. So let me get started with that real quick. Thanks to Tanya and Mark for this gorgeous gift in remembrance of Thunder. You guys are the best. I'm actually keeping this over there with his ashes, which are over on the other side of this table. I did the ugly cry in the P.O. box when I got that the other day. It just really hit my heart. Thank you guys so much. Also, Lollygagging and S-Bird for the amazing card and these forget-me-nots seeds. These are little sponges and they have seeds in there. So I'm going to plant these tomorrow. I waited to show you guys. Thank you so much. It really means a lot to me. And people that have just sent well wishes in inboxes. It's been a month, y'all, but things are looking up my way. Another funny thing, my son got a seasonal job working at one of those really scary, like haunted houses where it's very immersive. He's playing a zombie. My daughter's boyfriend is playing a pirate, and they want me to come through. And I was like, no, I'm not going to pay my money to potentially tinkle myself in front of 50 people. But now they've kind of convinced me maybe to do a live stream here on Pretty Lies as I'm going through and somehow rig a camera to where I have one facing out and one facing in. There used to be a show on MTV called Fear, and they sort of had that same setup. I don't know if I can work it out, but I maybe might not work it out on purpose. We'll see how it goes, but he is doing his first night tonight. I'm curious to see how it goes. All right, music fact of the day before we get started. Aha's huge hit, Take On Me, was only a hit after being released 3 times. After the single's initial failure, the band completely re-recorded it and also created that amazing animated video. The song obviously now regarded as just being a classic from the 80s, and it was only the 5th music video to reach 1 billion views on YouTube. That's amazing. By the way, there is an acoustic version of that song by Aha, this more recent. Hauntingly beautiful. I totally suggest you seek it out. I will put it out on social media later. Okay, so we're going to jump in. The state in Bryan Kohberger has responded to the defense's motion to ban cameras from the courtroom. And guess what? They're on board with the idea. So let's go through this filing really quickly. As the court and the parties are aware, this case has and continues to attract significant public and media attention involving not only traditional media, but also a broad range of social media related posting, blogs, podcasts, etc. This case also involves significant physical and emotional components, not only by virtue of the nature of the killings themselves, but also by the myriad circumstances surrounding the victims, their associates, friends, family, and the residents at 1122 King Road, and so forth. This case will necessarily involve not only evidence of a graphic nature, but also testimony from a number of young and vulnerable witnesses. These include the surviving roommates of Madison, Kaylee, Ethan, and Xana, and also a number of University of Idaho co-eds, families, and friends. In addition to, and at least partially as a result of, the substantial traditional and social media coverage, certain witnesses have already been subjected to threats and harassment, including physical intrusions directed not only at the witnesses and other university co-eds, but their extended families and friends. The state fully understands the enormous value that responsible media has in helping the public to understand the true facts of what occurs in court. The state believes, however, that those ends can be accomplished without the need for video or camera images or the physical presence of cameras in the courtroom. Based on the above, the state is concerned that allowing the presence of cameras in the courtroom will have a substantial chilling effect on the ability of witnesses to openly, fully, and candidly testify about some horrible occurrences. In addition, the state has a responsibility to take steps to ensure a fair trial for all involved. I called it. I knew they were going to bring Vallow into it, and they did. Judge Boyce's decision in Vallow Daybell attached to the state's June 6, 2023 brief on video and photographic coverage provides a thorough examination of the issues before the court. The state reiterates those same concerns, including the issue of jurors accessing the broadcast and seeing evidence which has not been put in front of them, and witnesses potentially viewing the broadcasted testimony of prior witnesses. So they want to prohibit cameras in the courtroom, both still and video, same as Vallow Daybell, at a minimum during trial and during any other court proceedings at which victims such as described above might be called to testify. So there you go. I have a big feeling cameras are going to be banned for this, just like in Vallow. Both of these cases are in Idaho. These are the two biggest cases that state has probably ever seen, and it stinks, but we will see. Maybe the judge goes the opposite way and says, hey, we're going to allow cameras. So I'll keep you posted on that. Moving on, Ruby Franke and her co-conspirator, Jodi Hildebrandt, had a hearing today. Very brief, took a long time to get there because WebEx, talk about the hot mess express, y'all. There were random people in boxes popping up. There was a woman with a toddler. There were just people from the nose up. Clearly did not know they were visible to the free world, right? They were talking, mics weren't muted. You could hear kids calling for their moms, and it just took forever. Finally, the hearing started. It was super quick, y'all. Ruby is looking rough. She was wearing yellow stripes, and apparently she has been transported to the medical unit in the jail. We don't know why. Jodi wore pink stripes. That means she must be escorted. They're all color-coded, I guess, according to your status. They waived the reading of the charges, and bail was denied. And so they're back in court on September 21st, I believe at 9:10 in the morning. I'll be in Disney World for my birthday. That's my birthday, but I will be watching that hearing. And maybe I'll do a little quick update from the happiest place on earth. So going back to April of 2020, in one incident, Ruby told police that she got a text from someone saying they were going to take her family down and there will be riots at their door when the world finds out the truth. Very interesting, because a lot of people had suspicions these kids were being abused. And there were just over a dozen visits by CPS. It took this long to get these kids. It literally took her son escaping to get these kids put in protective custody. Blows my mind. The arrest affidavit for Ruby and Jodi pretty much were the same. They recount the son running to the neighbor's house, asking for food and water, and the neighbor seeing the duct tape as well as the lacerations on the child. When officers arrived, they saw his condition was severe and he was transported to a local hospital. Now, in Jodi's affidavit, it says the child was in the direct care of Jodi as he was staying in her home. Inside Jodi's bathroom, investigators found gauze which had been used. This observation added to her knowledge of the abuse at the home. She requested a lawyer, as did Ruby. Neither one spoke to police or investigators. Once given her charges, Jodi told the officer that the two children that were being abused should never be allowed to be around any other kids. With that statement Jodi made, it led investigators to believe that she, in fact, had knowledge of the malnourishment, abuse, and neglect. So guess what? That charge was enhanced to second-degree felonies. Good for you, Jodi. You deserve it. Now, we know that today, neither one of them got bail. In the affidavit, it is asked that they not be granted bail due to the severity of the injuries and the fact that the Division of Children and Family Services has taken 4 of Ruby's children into custody. The investigator had not spoken to 2 of them by the time this report was written. Now, the female victim was found in Jodi's house after her brother made contact with police. She was malnourished, and get this, y'all, bless her heart. She initially refused medical treatment. It took 4 hours to get this poor child to agree to be seen. You have to wonder, is she scared she's going to be in trouble for going with authorities to be checked out? Sounds like a lot of fear instilled in this young kid. I can't imagine. I've watched some clips since all this became public. To be honest, I'd never heard of her before this. But what happened on those YouTube videos that 2.5 million people subscribed to? Can't imagine when cameras weren't rolling. After being transported to a local hospital and evaluated, it was determined that this young 10-year-old was malnourished as well. For Ruby's affidavit, they mentioned that she was seen on a YouTube video 2 days prior at Jodi's house. The observation adds to Ruby being present and having knowledge of the abuse, malnourishment, and neglect. She requested a lawyer also. Ruby had a court appearance for a shelter hearing regarding her 4 minor children to determine custody. That hearing lasted around 30 minutes. Her husband, Kevin, was there with his attorney, and her 2 oldest children were also there with an attorney sitting on the state's side. A lot of people have asked, why hasn't her husband been charged? The only thing I found is that he moved out maybe a year ago, and past that, I don't know. She made claims that one of her minor children sexually abused their sibling and molested other family members and children in the neighborhood over the years. She also said that one of her children, as young as 3, was watching pornography. Come on, a 3-year-old getting a phone and looking that up themselves. Give me a break, woman. Throwing a 3-year-old under the bus because you're in the pokey and you're looking rough. Ugh. Moving on, Ruby said in May, her child confessed to molesting 20 people, including cousins and neighbors, but she had no proof. It was said the court became very, very silent after she laid out these allegations. The judge did say the child would need to be placed in a home with no other children, just simply based on her allegations. An attorney who was sitting in the public area stood up and asked the judge to hear details from one of the mothers of the alleged victims. She was in the courtroom. The judge said that could be discussed at a later time. The Daily Mail tried to get a comment from the mother of the alleged victim as she left court, but she wouldn't comment. Ruby's husband also refused to comment when he left. His attorney said out of respect for the children, he would not comment. So we know now that September 21st is that next hearing for them. Ruby has claimed to have made millions of dollars from her YouTube channel, just abusing kids. I mean, hey, line in her pockets. It's crazy. A former patient of Jodi's is speaking out saying that she ruined his life. A man named Adam Steed spoke to People magazine about being her patient for therapy and also marriage counseling beginning back in 2008. Adam says that Jodi disclosed confidential information about him to the Mormon Church and the Honor Code office of BYU, which ultimately led to him being removed from the school and banished from church services. People have asked me why I'm not talking about the Mormon LDS angle on this. I don't do religion at all. I mean, Lori and Chad, of course, it kind of centered around some Mormon doctrine. I'm not familiar with a lot of that doctrine, but I don't dive into religious aspects just because somebody was LDS or Baptist or Muslim or whatever. Worship a rock. I don't care. But I don't do religion. Sorry. Religion and politics, never going to be on this show in any in-depth capacity unless it's spoken like this. Jodi did admit to disclosing information to those institutions. Adam told People magazine, I'm ready to talk about this lady because the world is ready to see it. These super sophisticated forms of manipulation that Jodi did just destroyed my life in incredible ways. He also said Jodi has a huge body count of worsening people's problems. I mean, I'm not surprised. He said she completely controls the relationships during counseling, and she believes that relationships need to die in order to be reborn. Moving back to Ruby, on an episode that aired days before her arrest, she talked about having a dirty little secret a person is getting away with. She said it might be 5 years, 10 years. I might even take it to the grave with me, my dirty little secret. So it appears I don't have any outcomes and I get away with it. She was said to be speaking hypothetically, putting herself in the position of a person who is harboring a secret. Goes on to say, victim is a place where I live, a place where I have pity for myself because I don't want to be responsible for me. I want to control everything around me so I can be comfortable, but I refuse to take responsibility for me. I could be dishonest and think I'm getting away with it because nobody knows. Touché, lady. By the way, YouTube has issued a permanent ban on Ruby due to the child abuse allegations. Moving on to a really cold case that there was just an arrest for. Remember, you can run, but you can't hide. Crystal Rogers, 8 years later, after she disappeared from her home in Kentucky over the 4th of July weekend, an arrest has finally been made. Joseph Lawson, who is 32, was indicted on criminal conspiracy to commit murder charges Those were filed July 24th, and complicity in tampering with physical evidence, that was filed in June of this year. The indictment did not name Crystal Rogers specifically, but it did say on July 3rd, 2015 and or July 4th, 2015, the above named defendant committed the offense of criminal conspiracy to commit murder with the intention of promoting or facilitating the crime, which he agreed to aid one or more persons in the planning or commission of the crime or an attempt or solicitation to commit the crime when he and or a co-conspirator intentionally caused the death of another. Crystal was last seen at her boyfriend's house and was reported missing on July 5th, 2015. 2 days later, her keys, cell phone, and purse were found inside her abandoned car. That car had a flat tire. Crystal's mother, Sherry Ballard, thinks the car was staged in an effort to throw off investigators. Her boyfriend, whose name is Brooks, was named as a primary suspect, but he was never charged. He was said to have shown little concern for his missing girlfriend, and he said she would often go out to be with friends after midnight. Now get this, Crystal's father, Tommy Ballard, was shot and killed while hunting on his own piece of property by an unknown gunman. His wife, Sherry, thinks this is because he was close to finding out what happened to his daughter. Attorney General David Cameron appointed a special prosecutor to investigate the deaths of Crystal and her father, Tommy, on January 4th of this year. He was arraigned yesterday, and the court entered a not guilty plea for him. His bond is set at $500,000. He'll be back in court on October 26th for a pretrial conference. By the way, unfortunately, her body has not been found. So maybe there's going to be some more arrests. It sure sounds like it from that, but we will see. Moving on to old Alec Murdaugh. Dick Harpootlian and Jim Griffin were on Good Morning America earlier this week, and Dick was talking about that group text that these jurors have. And he mentions the comment where someone said, "Who's talking?" as soon as all these allegations started becoming public. He said he doesn't think the jurors know the import of what is about to happen. He said these jurors need to lawyer up. They need to understand they may have exposure, and they need to be careful before they talk to the FBI, to SLED, or even him and Jim Griffin. Joe McCullough, one of my favorite people I met at trial, the man with the greatest hair in the courtroom and one of the funniest people I've ever met. He's representing two of the jurors in the tampering allegations. He spoke to Court TV and he said the claims don't please him as a trial lawyer or somebody who spent 6 weeks watching the trial in person, and also being a friend of the clerk of court who did a good job, in his opinion, running the courtroom. And he said he finds no great pleasure in where we find ourselves. He said the allegations are troubling and they have to be examined. He said these are tough allegations, and if the prosecution has to unwind their victory lap, it's going to be a very bitter pill to swallow. He said there may be innocent explanations, and then again, there may not be. He said his clients are two courageous ladies who reluctantly came forward to speak to the defense. So Joe and Dick were law partners for years. They've known each other for decades. He said how he became involved with these jurors is initially just after trial. He was asked to keep the jurors from being hounded by the media. He said he's still in that role. When asked why the jurors would not just go to the judge when this was allegedly going on, he said he thinks the jury was intimidated by the judge. He said juries assume a role and become followers and not leaders, and they're not going to provoke authority. And he said their silence in this matter is totally understandable. He said the next step is the investigation. And Will Folks from Fitz News today said that investigation's moving quickly. The jurors may find themselves talking to investigators or in a courtroom under oath about what they know. He said the burden shifts if the defense proves the tampering that has been alleged. Now, Ms. Hill, she's retained two different attorneys. Justin Bamberg, he was a regular fixture there in the courtroom. Love him to death. He was on the HBO documentary. And also she's retained Will Lewis. Mr. Bamberg has represented several of the financial victims of Alec. Moving on to Rex Heuermann. His wife spoke to the U.S. Sun this week. She was sitting outside the home that she shared with Rex and their children for decades. She had a hoodie on with the hood pulled up because she has skin cancer, so she has to be very careful. But she did say she was finally enjoying some peace and quiet. And she's just trying to come to terms with what's gone on in the last 7 weeks. She said she was just simply enjoying sitting outside. She said that she and her 2 adult children slept in a rental car for over a week while a search warrant was being executed on their home. Police were at that home, if you remember, for 12 days. I do believe all of their money was frozen. So I guess they just didn't have anywhere to go. She said she was in total shock and dissociation after learning her husband had been arrested and was suspected of being the Long Island serial killer. She said, really, when all this came down, she didn't even know where she was. Just total blur. When asked about Rex and his charges, she said, I've been told that anything I say can be used against me in a court of law, so don't want to talk about it. She filed for divorce less than a week after Rex was charged, finalizing their separation that will revoke any kind of marital privilege that she had. And so when this goes to trial, she may be forced to testify against Rex. All right. Last little bit of the day, Sarah Boone. Now, we're going to go through a lot of these letters probably next week that she has written to the judge, but her latest attorney asked to be withdrawn from her case, saying that her best bet is just to represent herself, y'all. This woman is 50 shades of gray. Now, that request was granted by the judge. In the filing from August 22nd, Mr. Bankowitz said, the defendant will not be satisfied with any attorney unless said attorney does not have a caseload and can dedicate his or her time solely to Mrs. Boone's case. The best possible avenue is to have the defendant represent herself, as no attorney can satisfy her. Ouch. He also said he could not effectively represent her, saying she uses derogatory language towards him, calling him a dud and a buffoon. Sarah has written numerous letters to the judge complaining about access to her attorneys. She's been through several public defenders, all who withdrew. In the latest letter from August 2nd, part of it says, I, as Mr. Bankowitz's client, cannot communicate with him via phone due to him still not activating 1 or 2 numbers he's given that do not work. He keeps giving me different reasons why each time I ask to keep trying. This has been ongoing for 13 months and counting. What else can I do, Your Honor? It seems my only hope is for a court date, which I'm included in, where my attorney's attendance is mandatory and I can vie for his attention during the minutes beforehand while in the courtroom. I'm sure all of the allowed live cameras could provide footage of me doing so every time. She also asked the judge to communicate with her attorney on her behalf. Not going to happen. The judge appointed a new unfortunate attorney to her case. Winston Hobson, you're up next. So let's see how long that one lasts. All right, guys, that's it for this episode. Y'all have a good weekend. We will see you soon.